Hi, I'm Ann Coulter. Welcome to my Substack. Today I have the formerly huge MSM legacy media bigwig Mark Halperin. He was political director at ABC News, political analyst at MSNBC, editor of the Note at ABC. He co-wrote Game Change, Double Down, was the original host of the circus. So first, welcome, Mark.
And thank you. Honored to be here. What are we serving today? Got brownies or anything? Yeah. All right. You're a good host. You're a good host, but not a great host.
No, you are a great host, and I've become a huge fan of your morning podcast. Well, also you do it in the evening, just the solo with you, but the morning two-way TV show with Sean Spicer and everybody's favorite liberal, Dan Turrentine. I've discovered after the election, everyone I know was listening to that show before the election. I mean, it's great now. It's basically what Politico claimed to be. You can go 1 hour at 10 a.m. 5 days a week and get all the political news you want if you happen to be a political junkie. But before the election, it was spectacular. So tell us about two-way.
Well, thank you. The morning show's on at 9 a.m. Eastern time.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Don't want people to miss it. Although you can watch it on demand. Two-way is a platform that is intended to create a different kind of experience for people. We really do think we have a chance to revolutionize not just political media, but all media. Because you think about most content, it's one way. Podcasts are one way, books are one way, Substacks one way, where someone can listen and occasionally maybe get a written response in social media. But we're trying to create conversations that are long, sophisticated, compelling, fun, in the political space, all voices under one roof, but allow people to participate, to talk to Sean Spicer and Dan Turrentine, to talk to whatever guests we have on, so that it's an experience that builds authentic community around shared ideas and shared interests, whether it's interest in politics or interest in dogs or interest in personal health or finance or music, whatever it is.
Yes, I've noticed you're expanding. The reason I think it was just incredibly compelling before the election, and don't miss TV, was that it was like a true focus group every day. And I think listeners of your show were a lot less shocked than others were when Trump ended up winning. I certainly was, just from listening to your callers. There were so many.
Yeah.
This is probably the least misogynistic I've ever been, because there were so many women calling into your show who were liberal, who were pro-choice, and they said because of crime, because of immigration, they were voting for Trump. And I think that struck you too.
It did. I mean, it was an incredible experience to have people come on, and we call on people without knowing, unless they're repeat participants. We call on people without knowing, and you'd think if you called on a young black woman or a young Hispanic man, you'd think they would have been for Kamala Harris, but almost comically, almost to a person, not everyone, but many, the majority who came on were for Trump, and they would explain so well, so articulately. And again, these are just community members part of two-way. We're not booking them. We're not, pre-selecting them. We're just bringing them in. And in politics, which is, again, not all of two-way, but it's been a big part of our launch. I agree with you that I had not just an understanding of Trump's chances, but why he had such a good chance. Far more textured. Almost any hour of our show, I learned more about the state of the race than reading the New York Times for a month, because people were bringing their authentic voices to the conversation. And the other thing I'll say is, we hear from people on the platform all the time who voted for Kamala Harris, who are liberal. They say they understand it better. Their liberal friends are freaking out. How could Trump have possibly won? People on two-way who were liberal said, well, I get it, because there were people on here who were not, if you pardon the joking shorthand, not MAGA crazies. They were people that they could relate to. And,
Yes.
And that prepared them. So I really love the platform as a reporter who can't always get on an airplane and go talk to people around the country. This brings the whole country under one electronic roof. And whether you're a reporter or just interested in the country, I find it to be unlike anything I've ever experienced as a journalist or as a citizen.
And we're going to get to the argument I have with you on Eric Adams, but
Mm,
you reminded me of a few more general questions I wanted to
sure.
ask you about. Um, I mean, you're known for your exquisite knowledge of the media and the Gang of 400, and as I think you just alluded to, saying you don't learn anything from reading the New York Times. Um, is there such a thing as the Gang of 400, which you can describe? And does anyone care what any of them think or say anymore?
Yeah. So you were off one digit on the time of the morning program. It's 9 a.m. It's actually the getting of 500.
Oh,
It's
it
a term.
is?
It is. It is. They're 500. If there were only 400, think of all the people who wouldn't make the cut. It's a term I came up with when I worked at ABC, and it's not meant to be extolling them or mystifying Washington. It's just the opposite. It's a mythical group of lobbyists, journalists, members of the establishment who live primarily in Washington, New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco. They lean left, but there are plenty of Republicans in the Gang of 500, and they represent the establishment point of view. And of course, if you'd surveyed the Gang of 500 in the early part of 2015 and said, "What are Donald Trump's chances of being the Republican nominee?" Zero of them would have said yes. And if you'd surveyed them after January 6th, probably two of them would have said he had some chance to win. So they're hopelessly out of touch with the populist MAGA wave that and the Bernie Sanders wave that has swept the country's politics. But they are very influential. They're very smart, even if they have some blind spots. And I refer to them as a device, kind of like a Greek chorus with handicaps who have strong opinions about what should happen and what might happen. But again, they've been kind of a little bit lost at sea during the Trump years.
So do you think they're as influential as they used to be? Does anybody care what Bob Woodward or
Yeah.
Adam Nagurny has to say about anything? I mean, I think this election, the reason I press you on this is it seemed to me that, and I watch a lot of MSNBC and
Yeah.
CNN, and man, for 4 years, for 8 years, they threw everything they had at Trump. The week of the election, you had prominent, pompous generals on throughout the network saying, yes, I believe Donald Trump is a fascist. Kamala, of course, called Trump a fascist. They threw everything at him, anyone big. And I would think that they themselves would realize, oh my gosh, we're irrelevant. So you think
Well,
they still have some influence?
they have some. I mean, look, it's hard to measure. You could have the best calipers in the world. I don't know that you could say how much less influential are they in some mathematical way than they were during the Cold War when they were at the height of their influence. They still have some. They still have great influence with Congress. They still have great influence with lobbying campaigns. They still have access to a lot of money that gets spent on things like advertising. They
Mhm.
control a lot of what politicians in both parties say and do because there are a lot of consultants in the Gang of 500, political consultants. But there's no doubt that not just because of Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, but just the general trend away from the establishment, more populist points of view, all the podcast shows like yours. I mean, their influence is greatly reduced, but I don't believe it's been reduced to zero.
Okay. One thing I noticed during the pre-election, and again, post-election is really great, but the pre-election just, I don't know, it was amazing because we knew what was going to happen
Thank you.
thanks to your TV show. And one thing I noticed that you just alluded to, you're just calling on people, you have no idea what their politics are. And I mean, two things I noticed. You had to constantly remind people, I'm not pro-Trump. I'm just a moderator. But because so many people who were calling in were pro-Trump, and to stop getting them to all be pro-Trump, you would insist, okay, only people who are for Kamala, raise your electronic hands.
Yeah, I mean, I am an old-fashioned journalist, and there aren't very many left. But I'm not pro-Trump or anti-Trump. I'm for the American people, and I've understood Trump for over a decade now better than most traditional journalists because most of them have Trump derangement syndrome, and they're part of the resistance. So that's given me, I think, more insight into Trump than closed-minded people might have. It's also attracted some people to my platform, not just on Two Way, but other places I appear, who like the fact that I'm not biased and I call the press out and the establishment out all the time. But Two Way for politics is intended to be all voices, and there are a lot of liberals on there. Currently, they're a little depressed, they're a little intimidated. They frankly don't like being attacked for being liberal, and so It's my job to figure out how to coax them to have, if not 100% or equal participation, at least not so the disparity is so great that you can't hear it. I tell everybody who comes on the platform, I get complaints all the time. Oh, you had someone on, they were so stupid. Their point of view was so far left or so far right. The whole point of two-way is to be able to hear different opinions so you can understand the people who don't agree with you. And I say to people, if you think that person was way too MAGA or you think that person was way too left-wing, you should be thanking me because it gives you an opportunity in a civil environment, a thoughtful, sophisticated environment to hear what they have to say. And most of the people on two-way get that every so often now. Some people forget the whole point of the platform.
You can watch complete episodes of Unsafe with Ann Coulter by subscribing to anncoulter.substack.com. That's anncoulter.substack.com. You can also listen to complete episodes for free at Ricochet.com. Choose Unsafe from the pull-down menu at the top of the page. That's Ricochet.com, your home for civil center-right conversation on the web.